The age-old debate amongst gamers has been waged time and time again. Despite the prevalence of controller support for PC games, many PC gamers swear that you cannot get a better performance from anything other than keyboard and mouse, despite the advantages that controllers offer, such as comfort and ease of access to all of the buttons. But what if there was a gaming keyboard that could offer all of those same conveniences, while still being a keyboard? Well, there is. The Azeron Cyborg is the latest version of an Azeron gaming keyboard, like the one we've covered before. This interesting looking thing can, according to the website, improve your gaming performance while still giving you the ultimate in comfort. But can it actually live up to those claims? Well, there's only one way to find out. I'm William Worrell with MakeUseOf.com, and let's take a look at the Azeron Cyborg gaming keyboard. The first thing that you need to know about the Cyborg is that it's highly customizable, just like all of Azeron's products. When you go to the website to start your purchase, you're presented with an incredibly in-depth customizer. You can change everything from the individual colours of the different keys, as well as the shape of the palm rest and which hand you'll be using the device with. Obviously, that means that you can perfectly tailor the device to your own personality and tastes, which is exactly how I ended up with this neon coloured trash pile, which I love. You can even add your own custom nameplate to say whatever you'd like, although you are limited to only 8 characters. Thanks to the level of customizability, the product's price does vary, but depending on the model that you actually choose, as well as the extras that you select to go with it, the price can vary from $180 to around $230 US. Customizability really lies at the heart of this product, even beyond the way that you order it. The product arrives in the box, already assembled, and is really well packaged, I might add. But it also comes with some spare screws, different types of thumbstick pads, and a shockingly high quality screwdriver. Normally, if a screwdriver was going to be included in a product like this, it would be on the same level as the free tools you get with flat-packed furniture. But Azeron has gone all out on this thing. It's got their logo on the side, 3 interchangeable parts, and just feels really solidly made, like it's not going to shred at the end. The reason such a high quality tool is included is because you basically need one to get the best use out of the device. Almost every single aspect of this keyboard can be fine-tuned to fit your exacting specifications. If you have a large hand with wide spaces between fingers, you can still make it fit. The same also goes for short stubby fingers, or in the case that you've actually lost a finger, you can still make it work. The base and other components are covered in adjustable screws. You can loosen these to adjust your fit, and then tighten them back up again to hold things in place. There's so much to adjust here, including the distance between segments, the distance away from your palm that each tower rests at, the angle of each individual component, including both the thumbsticks and the top half of the towers. You can even rotate the thumbstick itself to alter which direction it points in, if you feel more comfortable going one way or the other. This is probably one of the most customizable keyboards, or controllers in general, that you'll ever use, which also makes it pretty much perfect for any hand size or articulation level. The build quality on this device is really up there. Most of the components are 3D printed, but since this is such a small company, they'd have to be to maintain that level of customizability. Having said that, the printing is typically of a higher quality. You have to look pretty close to see the printing lines on most parts of the keyboard, and nothing feels flimsy or like it's about to fall apart, which is quite a feat considering how many moving parts there are on this device. In terms of quality, the only real letdown is the nameplate. For some reason, it's got jagged bits of runoff and holes in it, and it's the only component that's like this. I'm not 100% sure if this is an error in my model, or if this happens with all of them, but it's certainly something worth noting. If you have a small file, you can probably sand this down to be a bit better. All of this talk about the physical side of the device is great, but it all means nothing if the controller doesn't work. To get started with the controller, once you've finished customizing it to your hand shape, you plug it into your PC with a single USB Mini B to USB Type A cable, included in the box. You then have to install Azeron's key mapping software to change the layout of the controller's 28 programmable keys. The software in question is really well designed, and it's incredibly simple to create different layouts for various different games, preventing you from having to remap each time you switch between them. You can also store 2 different key layouts directly on the device, which you can switch between by using the toggle button on the side. As you switch between them, the currently selected layout is indicated by the LEDs on the side, with a single LED indicating your first save layout, and 2 indicating your second. You may be wondering why you'd even want to store a controller map to the device itself. Well, the primary reason is ease of use. With a controller map or 2 installed, you no longer have to install the mapping software to customize it. Say, for instance, you want to take it to a friend's house to show off to them. They don't have to install the Azeron software to get the thing working. They can just use one of the 2 already done maps, and away they go. Another great reason for this feature is that you can technically use this keyboard on a console, providing the game you're trying to play supports keyboard and mouse input. Now that we have the Cyborg set up, we can start testing some of those claims on the website and really put it through its paces. To do that, we've selected a bunch of games from action games to MMOs to really test how it works. But before that, we should probably discuss how it feels to use, especially over long periods of time. The Cyborg comes with 2 different wrist pads, a curved model and a flat model. It does cost extra to have both included, but it could be worth it if you want the best feeling possible. In the end, the flat rest ended up feeling the most comfortable for me personally, but others I've had test the device have said that the curved rest was much better. Either way, the actual feel of the keyboard, once adjusted, is incredibly comfortable. Rather than holding your hands in a specific position, as you would do with a regular keyboard, if set up correctly, the Cyborg feels more natural. You can rest your hand on it in the same way you would rest your hand on a table or an armrest. Part of the reason it feels so natural is that you can twist parts around and fit them to exactly where you need them to be. Having said that, that's only really the case if you're using the device exclusively for yourself. If you're sharing with someone else, you have to adjust back and forward each time when you're switching between different people. With this level of customizability, that's sort of inevitable. And in all honesty, it's not the end of the world to use the device with someone else's setup, assuming that your hand sizes aren't drastically different. So, it certainly seems to cover that claim of being more comfortable. However, does it stand up to the claim made by adverts that it will improve performance? To test this out, we selected several different games with different use cases. Vermintide 2 and Call of Duty World War II are both first-person action games, with relatively simple control mapping. We also tested Black Desert Online and Lord of the Rings Online for the excessive ability mapping that those games feature. Finally, we tried it out with Humankind and Saints Row III to really give it a broad set of tests. In pretty much all of our tests, using the Cyborg did take some time to get used to. When you've spent hundreds of hours playing a game with a keyboard and mouse, swapping to a completely different control method is going to slow you down. This was true of both Vermintide 2 and Call of Duty World War II Zombies. However, after about an hour or so of play, effectively one round in both cases, using the controller became second nature. The design here is really quite ingenious. Once you have the controller set up to your hand shape, it dramatically reduces the amount of travelling that your fingers have to do to hit buttons. While it may seem negligible, in terms of action gaming, milliseconds can really make a difference. Rather than having to move your fingers around a flat keyboard surface and then bring them back into your resting position, you simply twitch any given finger slightly in a direction. In Vermintide 2, this made reacting to an enemy threat much quicker, either pulling out an ult or switching to a ranged weapon to deal with the threat before it could hit. It gives you a hell of an edge when it comes to surviving, at least at the higher levels of play, such as on Legend or Cataclysm difficulty. The same is also true of an FPS like World War II Zombies. Having a literal twitch between you and a melee attack makes getting through matches easier, whether you're working alone or with friends. This is also true of online, where actions just become smoother. It's almost like the best of both worlds in terms of a keyboard versus a controller. Moving between inputs feels more natural, but you also don't have to forego the excessive buttons or the ability to use a mouse. Of course, that's not going to help you if you're absolutely terrible at online shooters. Like some people. Moving on as quickly as possible before people see my KDR, next we tried out MMOs. These seemed like a perfect choice,
since there are usually a lot of toolbars filled with different abilities to macro. With 28 different mappable keys, it seems like a no-brainer that this would make MMOs much easier to play and enjoy. As you might expect, it's useful having the easily mappable 28 keys for all of those quickbar abilities, and you can even map more than one input to the same button to access the secondary and tertiary quick slots. Having said that, Lotro has 72 different quick slots, so you won't be fitting all of them on, at least not without using one of the keys as a modifier. This is where the first and only real wrinkle appears when it comes to key mapping this keyboard. For some reason, the Azeron software doesn't register the tilde key properly. It's easy to work around this issue, but there are several games that use this key, including Lord of the Rings Online. Minor niggles aside, the Azeron Cyborg is certainly useful for MMOs, allowing you to rely on your quick slots much more heavily, because they're much easier to access than they would be on a keyboard. It's also just easier to remember them, especially in the late game, where you would have 50 plus abilities and items to contend with. The same is true of a more action-oriented MMO like Black Desert Online, but to a lesser extent in many ways. Because this is an MMO that is designed around the idea that you can happily play it with a normal gamepad, the Cyborg offers you less of an advantage over just using a controller, or a regular mouse and keyboard setup. Having said that, it's still very comfortable to use, just like it is with pretty much everything else.
So clearly, in the right kind of MMO, the Cyborg can offer you advantages. Basically, in a classic WoW style MMO, with lots of quick bars, it can give you much quicker access to those abilities and items, without having to either macro them to a random key on your keyboard, or having to toggle through loads of ability bars, or clutter up your UI.
The final group of testing that we did was for some of the more outlier genres. First up, we've got a 4X strategy game in the case of Humankind. While the Azeron Cyborg works just fine here, it doesn't add too much to the experience. Part of the reason for that is that it just feels better to mostly control the game through the mouse. That's what the game is designed around, for the most part. While it works fine for scrolling around the map, it's unlikely to increase your performance. Having said that, if you're playing a strategy game filled with macros, and you're playing online competitive modes with other players, then you're probably going to get more of a boost. The story is pretty similar for Saints Row 3. It works really well, but doesn't really add all that much versus just using a controller. It still feels great to use, but it's not a killer reason to buy the thing, especially not when you're playing single-player games.
So can we say that the Cyborg lives up to the hype of improving your gaming performance? I'd say for the most part yes, at least in action games. Any kind of game where that kind of twitchy, instant reaction performance matters, the Cyborg is going to help.
If you're a high skill level online gamer, adding the Azeron Cyborg to your setup is certainly going to give you an edge. So much so that I doubt they'd let you use one at an esports event, unless everyone was using one at the same time. If you're already hitting the ceiling on how well you can play with a regular keyboard and mouse setup, the Azeron is the perfect device for pushing you over your limits.
While it's true that the Azeron Cyborg is mostly aimed at a gaming audience, there are a few other areas where it could be quite useful.
Everything from video editing to game development is chock full of shortcuts, and once you've been working for a long time with those programs, you eventually learn them all. By mapping the important shortcuts to the Cyborg, you can dramatically improve the efficiency of your workflow. Using it while editing images in Photoshop or videos in Premiere Pro allows you to access shortcuts lightning quick. So if you're making a lot of cuts or scrubbing through frame by frame, it's much easier to do than picking out those shortcuts on a regular keyboard. It's even better if you're just starting out with a new program and have to learn all of those shortcuts again. Just pull up a list of shortcuts and map them all to a new heading in the Azeron software, and you won't have to bother remembering that V means select or shift plus apostrophe makes the video go full screen, because you can just map them to specific fingers. With a simple twitch of my index finger upwards, I can be previewing the video or scrubbing through my rushes, and it's much quicker than having to learn the shortcuts manually. You could even technically learn to type with it, for the most part, if you're really committed to the idea and want to be able to type with one hand for some reason.
So, at this point, I feel confident saying that the claims made by the Azeron website are justified. If you're a high-level online player looking to top out your performance, then you might have just found the perfect gaming peripheral. Not only is it highly customizable, both in its overall design as well as down to the minutiae of how it's set up, but it also offers a premium quality experience when it comes to gaming over a long period of time. While the price is certainly up there, it's clear that a lot of love and attention has gone into the making of this product. Minor faults with the name tag aside, you're not going to find a product like this from anyone else, and especially not one that you can customise on every conceivable level and truly make your own. If you're a PC gamer looking for a true, high-quality premium gaming experience, then this is an absolute must-have peripheral. Thank you for watching this MakeUseOf.com review, and thank you to Azeron for sending us the Cyborg to cover. If you liked this video, please like it, subscribe, and let us know what you thought about it in the comments. And feel free to check out the written version of this review in the description.